Languages do not spring up out of nowhere. Behind every idiom lie centuries, if not millennia, of continuous change and evolution, with sometimes dramatic results. That is the case with English, the world's most spoken language, whose earliest form, called Old English, is completely different from its modern variant. To understand how this language was born and evolved with time, we need to take a look at the various populations that have inhabited the British Isles over the centuries. The Isles have been inhabited since prehistory, but they only became suitable for stable settlement after the last ice age. During this time, the land was inhabited by tribes from the continent, whose cultural and archaeological legacy includes a Stonehenge monument. We have no record of the languages they spoke, however, and we can only properly speak of a linguistic landscape with the arrival of the Celts, who colonized the Isles and brought their languages with them. Indeed, by the time of the Romans' arrival, the population of Britannia spoke a Celtic language called Brythonic. When the Romans conquered the province of Britannia, they introduced the use of Latin, which is used in fields such as bureaucracy, commerce, and education, and coexisted with Brythonic, spoken by most of the local population. Latin, however, fell into disuse after the Romans withdrew their troops and the Germanic tribes arrived. The Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes were Germanic tribes living on the North Sea coast. When they invaded England, they founded several kingdoms, and with time their societies blended together into a single Anglo-Saxon identity, under one single language, Old English. These Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were constantly under attack from Viking raiders, whose invasion completely upended the political status quo and led to an influx of Old Norse-speaking colonists. This new language was mutually intelligible with Old English, and contributed to the latter with new terms and a simplification of its grammar. The Old English period ended in 1066, when William the Conqueror defeated the English king in the Battle of Hastings and conquered the land under the Norman standard. English nearly disappeared from literature, replaced by French, and by the time it re-emerged, it had already been irrevocably changed by the language of its conquerors and become Middle English. From a linguistic point of view, Old English was a Germanic language, akin to German, Swedish, Danish, and more. The first incarnation of the language was written in a runic alphabet called Futhark, which was gradually replaced by a Latin alphabet due to the influence of Christianization. A distinguishing feature of Old English was its nature as a highly inflected language, completely unlike modern English. Articles, adjectives, pronouns, and nouns were declined for number, case, and grammatical gender. During the Old English period, several literary genres flourished. The first poets whose names are recorded specialized in works of a religious nature, like Caedmon's Hymn or Cinneval's poems. Prose writing thrived under the reign of Alfred the Great, whose reforms led to the translation from Latin to English of several works, and paved the way for the development of historiography with the publication of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. Another popular genre at the time was the epic poem. Several examples have survived to this day, but one in particular is considered not just a masterpiece, but also a milestone in British literature. It is called Beowulf. Beowulf is a poem of more than 3,000 lines, written by an anonymous author between the 8th and 11th century. It tells the deeds of the hero Beowulf, a Swedish warrior who travels to Denmark in order to defeat Grendel, a monstrous creature who has been terrorizing the court of Danish king Hrothgar for years. Once the deed is done, however, Grendel's own mother seeks vengeance and attacks the court herself. Beowulf then tracks her down to her watery lair and, after a long and grueling battle, manages to kill her. The hero thus goes back to Sweden, where he rules as a wise and fair king for 50 years, until his kingdom is attacked by a dragon. Beowulf faces it in battle and slays his foe, but is mortally wounded in the fight and dies shortly afterwards. The poem ends with his funeral. The poem, which had been lost for a long time, was rediscovered in the 18th century, but it only gained its fame as a masterpiece thanks to Tolkien. The author of The Lord of the Rings not only noted its elegant composition and its great literary value, but took inspiration from it for its greatest works. The character of Smaug in The Hobbit, for instance, is directly inspired by the dragon from the tale of Beowulf. Today, Beowulf has been amply analyzed by academia and scholars of Old English. We shouldn't forget, however, that it is a tale with universal value, which has been adapted and retold from several points of view, and is a source of fascination not just for the experts, but for anyone who wishes to immerse themselves in a world full of wonders, monsters, and heroes.